Welcome to the Index. For today's episode, I'll be ranking all 9 of the live-action films in which Batman appears, starting with the 1989 Tim Burton movie and ending with the present day. The one exception will be Suicide Squad, since his appearance in that film is just a brief cameo. In all of these movies, Batman is one of the major central characters. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of spoilers, and I'm not doing a deep dive into Batman's place in these movies. I'm just ranking all of the films from my least favorite to my favorite. Before we get started, thank you so much for watching the video. Click on that subscribe button, the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new video. Number 9, Justice League. Good lord, what happened? I understand that Zack Snyder experienced an unspeakable family tragedy that facilitated his departure, but they didn't simply bring in Joss Whedon to complete what was done. They yanked off the roof, burned the walls to the ground, ripped out all the plumbing, and took a jackhammer to the foundation. While Marvel was busy building a massive, deep, expanded universe, DC was figuring out a way to have Batman and Superman punch each other, and then have Wonder Woman show up and, ooh, look, here's Aquaman, and oh wow, Cyborg, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, the Flash, he's so quick. It's all so gross and makes whoever's running the show at Warner Brothers look like a bunch of sweaty tryhards. The demise of Justice League can be summed up perfectly in a single film clip. Here's Superman fighting the other members of the team, and everything looks cool and great. Henry Cavill looks perfectly normal, and holy shit, what is this? What happened to Henry Cavill's face? Well, here's what happened. Warner Brothers was unwilling to delay the movie from its original release date for the purpose of expanded reshoots, so they had to hastily remove the mustache that he'd grown for Mission Impossible Fallout. Congratulations, you didn't just ensure that Justice League would fail at the box office, you guaranteed that everyone would laugh at the movie and that they all know who exactly to blame. This movie sucks. There's just no way around it. Number 8, Batman and Robin. Look, Batman and Robin is a bad movie. It's a bad movie. I know it, and you know it too. But here's the thing. Joel Schumacher, who also directed Batman Forever, wanted to take the franchise in a more goofy direction. The fact that Mr. Freeze is played by Arnold Schwarzenegger and George Clooney's Batman has a Bat-branded credit card tells you that this isn't a movie to be taken seriously. But here's the issue. Batman Forever was a sequel to the Tim Burton films, and everyone kind of assumed that Batman and Robin would be a sequel to, that. We assumed that because Pat Hingle played Commissioner Gordon and Michael Gough played Alfred in all 4 movies, that Batman and Robin was clearly meant to be in the same universe. In Schumacher's defense, he handled it like a champ, even going so far as to apologize for the movie's existence. Oh, and Alicia Silverstone was a terrible Batgirl. Number 7, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. I'm going to defend Zack Snyder a little bit, but let me dump all over the movie first. This film is not a complete train wreck, but it has a lot of problems. This version of Lex Luthor desperately wants to be a young, quirky tech billionaire, but just comes off like an entitled turd. He's got a lot of daddy issues, plays basketball at work, because apparently that's a thing, has a horrendous hairpiece, and doesn't get any real explanation for why he behaves like this. The setup for the Batman and Superman fight is extremely stupid, and for a guy who can move faster than a bullet, Superman seems completely inept at stopping the exploding briefcase at the Capitol and getting out of the way of Batman's kryptonite canisters. The Martha scene is also total cringe and not nearly as clever as Zack Snyder seems to think.
You're letting him kill Martha.
Oh, it's so bad, you guys. It's so bad. In addition to that multitude of sins, Wonder Woman could have simply picked up the spear herself and murdered Doomsday at the end. She didn't though, because that would have made way too much sense. By far, the biggest failing of Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, in my opinion, was the marketing. Instead of giving the audience their just reward of being surprised that Doomsday is in the movie, some brainiac over at Warner Brothers decided to once again screw everything up by putting him directly in the trailer. Have you guys learned nothing about payoffs? Really? Nothing? I'm going to assume that this trailer wasn't Snyder's fault and that somebody at Warner Brothers was responsible for hamstringing this movie before it was even released. That's my only real defense of Snyder. The director got a lot of grief for allowing Superman to accidentally kill half of Metropolis by using Zod as a homing missile during the Man of Steel climax, and seeing Anderson Cooper explain that, ooh, that building is empty, and wow, good thing they evacuated that island, simply comes off as pandering to upset fans. The Batman warehouse scene was cool for about 2 minutes. Number 6, Batman Forever. I have some very specific memories around the time when I saw Batman Forever. My dad and I were in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, doing a statewide bike tour called Ride the Rockies. The movie theater in Steamboat had 2 screens, and one was playing Congo and the other was playing Batman Forever. We ended up seeing both movies and both of them were fine. Taking over the reins of Bruce Wayne for Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer does an admirable job as the Caped Crusader. Jim Carrey essentially plays it very close to being his own warped version of the Joker, and Tommy Lee Jones plays Two-Face as not the least bit frightening or menacing. Nicole Kidman is a psychiatrist who digs into Bruce's repressed memories and finds, bats and sadness. At least they made some effort to show what makes a man dress up like a bat and punch people at 3 o'clock in the morning, but that doesn't mean it's a great movie. I guess I would say that Batman Forever is just okay. Not awful, but okay. Fantastic soundtrack, though. Number 5, The Dark Knight Rises. Okay, now we're getting into the really good stuff, which might stir up some negative emotions in people that really dislike this particular film. They were filming The Dark Knight Rises on Wall Street when I moved to New York. I was living at the hotel where I worked and could hear them filming the massive fight sequence in front of the stock exchange. I also saw the movie in the city, and there's something about seeing something that was happening right there on the big screen. That's not to say that it doesn't have problems, because it certainly does. Bane is essentially a hired hand instead of the real bad guy. Bruce Wayne is somehow able to get out of the middle of the desert with no money while he's basically wearing a burlap sack. And the movie ends with one of the most wealthy men on the entire planet hiding in broad daylight in the middle of Europe. There's also the Robin reveal at the end, which is underwhelming to say the least. But I don't know what it is. There's something charming about this movie that I still love. Maybe it's the goofy banter between Bruce and Selina, or Batman dropping a nuke in the ocean during a surprisingly quiet moment, or the Gotham police blowing up a bridge I used to walk across on a regular basis. Until he's revealed to just be a lackey, Bane is able to beat Batman to a pulp with his bare hands, and watching the Pittsburgh Steelers get dropped into a hole in the ground will always put a smile on my face. Littlefinger also made an appearance, and Game of Thrones spoiler incoming, cover your ears for the next 3 seconds. He dies here too. Number 4, Batman Begins. Let me get this out of the way before I talk about how much I love this movie. Batman Begins is an awful title. Katie Holmes was way out of her element. Bale's bat voice is bad, but not as bad as the sequels. And the fight sequences border on being completely unwatchable. That's all the stuff I hate about it. Everything else, I pretty much like. The origin story for Batman is absurdly deep, and choosing to have Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows play a pivotal role in Batman's beginning is extremely rewarding, and I love everything about it. Apart from Katie Holmes, we're given a bunch of fantastic supporting cast members in the form of Morgan Freeman, Gary Oldman, Michael Caine, Tom Wilkinson, Cillian Murphy, and Rutger Hauer. Even more than the sequels, Gotham City, as portrayed in the Nolan Batverse, is at its finest in Batman Begins. From the massive train that runs into the heart of Wayne Tower, to the dank and dirty Narrows, it's as close as we can get to the nastiness of the Burton films, and I'm a fan. In a modern comic world where spectacle can be king, Batman Begins remembers that a good movie really starts with good characters, deft direction, and a script that knows what it's doing. This might be the most underappreciated of all the Nolan films, and it's very close to being my favorite. This is also the only Batman movie that prominently features Qui-Gon Jinn. Number 3, Batman Returns. People assumed a lot of things when Tim Burton was hired to direct the 1989 Batman film. They assumed it was going to be goofy and silly, and they assumed that Michael Keaton was going to be an awful Dark Knight. Wrong on both accounts. Wrong. No better movie exemplifies how very wrong these people were than Batman Returns, a movie that doubles down on the corruption and nastiness of Gotham City. This version of Batman also makes no apologies for killing people. For example, this little gem right here. What a time to be alive. We're also treated to a fantastic performance from Christopher Walken as Max Schreck, a mean, corrupt, and sinister politician who quite literally shoves Michelle Pfeiffer's Selina Kyle directly out of a window to her presumed death. My favorite part about that is that he doesn't even try to cover up the crime. He just leaves her there in the street to bleed out directly underneath the office window. This might have been a writing mistake, but I'm going to assume not, because Max Schreck is such a bad person that it might actually make sense. Speaking of Selina Kyle, this Catwoman just oozes sex appeal, and she actually ends up being the most tragic figure of the entire thing. This could have been a phoned-in performance from Pfeiffer, but it is not. She perfectly transitions from the meek secretary to feisty villain without skipping a beat. As for the film's other villain, Danny DeVito's Penguin isn't a high society snob like the comics or the old shows. He's the exact opposite. A discarded mutant baby tossed into the river by his disgusted parents and adopted by actual penguins. If you're going to completely throw out a character's backstory and create something from scratch, Tim Burton proves that this is how you do it. Batman Returns didn't have the initial punch of its predecessor, but it's aged shockingly well. The Batman standalone movies have always been dark, and none of them have nailed that aspect better than Batman Returns. While we're on the subject of, dark, number 2, The Dark Knight. I don't think I've given The Dark Knight enough credit over time. I tend to go back and forth between this and Batman Begins as to which is my favorite, and I just have to give my nod to this one. While Begins completely nails the origin story, that version of Gotham City is superior, and Batman's voice is now nearly impossible to listen to without stabbing yourself in the neck with a fork. Everything in The Dark Knight gets cranked up to 11. The story provides us with an intimate glimpse into Batman's direct involvement fighting organized crime, dealing with unfathomable personal loss, and facing a madman that just might be his undoing. While Heath Ledger's tragic death robbed us of any future sequels, his performance here is still amazing. No better sequence shows us his perfect combination of genius and crazy like the introductory sequence in the bank. While the timing and execution is essentially impossible, the Joker is so in control of everything while pretending to not be in control that it goes off without a hitch. Michael Caine's first and only scene with the Joker is also in this movie, and Caine was so terrified of what he was seeing that he completely forgot his line. Yeah, Michael Caine was supposed to say something here. Doesn't matter, the scene is awesome regardless. Gary Oldman is practically invisible as Commissioner Gordon, and Maggie Gyllenhaal is beyond adequate as Katie Holmes' replacement. Enough praise can't be given to her pitch-perfect performance. It's not easy to immediately step into a role created for and by someone else, but her Rachel Dawes elevates every scene she participates in. Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent certainly gets to shine in the film's third act, and the scene where he threatens to murder Gordon's entire family is still hard to stomach. That scene culminates in one of the darkest moments in all of the Batman films, with Bruce choosing to sacrifice the Batman for the sake of Gotham and become the very villain the world must now punish for Harvey's sins. If you ever thought that Batman was going to go back to being a goofy, family-friendly TV show in the 60s, The Dark Knight is here to remind you, nah bruh. Number 1. Batman. If you thought that Ben Affleck had it tough when he was cast as Batman, wait until I tell you about what happened to Michael Keaton. With Beetlejuice and Mr. Mom firmly planted in the public consciousness, folks were unhappy with this choice. 50,000 people wrote letters and sent them directly to Warner Brothers. That's not 50,000 emails, folks, or 50,000 tweets. That's sitting down, writing a letter like with a pen and paper, paying for a stamp, putting that stamp on a sealed envelope, and sticking it in the mail, but doing it 50,000 times. The studio had originally wanted to cast an action star, but Burton stuck to his choice. There's a moment in the first trailer when Batman is in the Axis Chemicals building and shoots a dude in the face with his grappling gun and yanks him over a railing. I can practically see Burton in the editing room mumbling about those 50,000 letters and laughing when Batman later blows up that same building and presumably kills everyone inside. The movie begins shortly after Batman takes up the mantle of crime fighter, none of which is actually shown to the audience. It's a weird decision, but turns out to be the right one. The public is slowly becoming aware of the Batman, but he's mostly just a myth at this point. Our introduction to him involves him picking up a pair of criminals who just robbed a family, beating the hell out of them, and dangling one of them off a roof. It's quite the introduction and tells us that this Batman is going to clean up the streets however he has to. If that means he has to do it one bad guy at a time, so be it. As Batman's cleaning up those streets, Jack Napier is here to make them just as dirty again. The right-hand man to mob boss Carl Grissom has great aspirations. Aspirations brought to the forefront after Batman sends him into a vat of chemicals for a facial makeover. Taking over for the freshly murdered Grissom, the Joker here isn't an anonymous psychopath like in The Dark Knight. He has a real name, and a real past, and real goals. It's certainly a different take on the role, and one that veteran actor Jack Nicholson hits out of the park. If you picture in your head what a Tim Burton Joker looks like, this movie gives you exactly that. Kim Basinger's Vicky Vale is surprisingly deep as she desperately tries to pierce the curtain that hides all of Bruce's pain, and he continually lets her down. The other major character that needs to be discussed is the movie's setting, Gotham City. In my mind, when I think of Batman movies, this is the Gotham City without question. Burton absolutely nails every single square inch of it. From the bizarre art exhibit, to the grimy alleyways, to the sprawling Gothic bell tower, no other movie has created such a depressing and dreary playground for the Caped Crusader. Batman was revolutionary at the time, and Tim Burton proved the entire world wrong in 1989 when he made the definitive Batman movie. Thank you again so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, click on that red subscribe button. You can also like and share the video. That all really helps the engagement on the channel. Also, make sure to sound off down in the comments. Let me know that Batman and Robin is the greatest comic book movie of all time, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.